That winter, the snow did not fall. It hunted on a frozen road outside a mountain town. A police officer found something the world had already decided to forget. A German shepherd puppy so thin and silent that even the wind had stopped asking him to live. The officer almost kept driving one more mile and the story would have ended in the snow. But he stopped. What happened in the next few minutes would change two broken lives and leave a courtroom speechless. Months later. This is not a rescue story. This is a story about the moment when heaven holds its breath and waits to see what a human heart will do. Before we begin, tell me where you are watching from and leave a comment. Because somewhere tonight another life is waiting for someone like you to stop. Winter had wrapped the mountain town of Ashford Ridge, Montana, in a white silence so thick it felt like the world had paused mid-breath. Snow fell in wide, slow flakes, the kind that swallowed sound and made streetlights glow like distant stars underwater. The wind rolled off the Bitterroot Peaks and threaded its way through the pine-lined roads, carrying the clean, metallic smell of coming night. It was the kind of winter evening that turned ordinary moments into memories without asking permission. Deputy Aaron Wilder, 46, drove his patrol truck carefully along the eastern access road, tires crunching softly over ice. He was tall and broad-shouldered, built the way men get when they spend decades working outdoors in difficult weather. His hair, once dark brown, now carried a streak of early gray at the temples, and the lines at the corners of his eyes told the quiet story of a man who had seen more endings than beginnings. His face held the calm of someone steady under pressure, but behind that calm lived a deep well of empathy that the job had never managed to burn away. Years earlier, the sudden loss of his wife in a highway accident had changed him. Since then, Aaron moved through the world with a certain patience, as though he had learned that every second mattered and none of them should be wasted on anger. The radio crackled with low chatter from dispatch, but the road ahead was empty. Ashford Ridge was one of those places where winter arrived early and stayed long, and by nightfall the town seemed to fold into itself. A closed diner's neon sign blinked at the edge of the highway. Snow dusted the roofs of darkened shops. The river beyond the old sawmill whispered under ice. Aaron slowed as his headlights swept across something dark near the edge of the road. At first he thought it was a fallen branch or maybe a torn garbage bag dragged by the wind. But then the shape moved. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just enough to tell him it was alive. He pulled the truck to the shoulder and stepped out into the cold. The wind cut through his coat, stinging his cheeks. His boots sank into fresh snow as he approached. The shape resolved itself into a dog. A young German shepherd, maybe 6 months old. The puppy sat on the frozen gravel with his body curved inward, ribs visible beneath skin that clung too tightly to bone. Large patches of his fur were gone, the remaining coat dull and thin, black and tan dulled to the color of old ashes. Frost clung to his whiskers and the edges of his ears. His paws were swollen, cracked, raw from the cold. What struck Aaron most were the dog's eyes. They were open, dark, and strangely calm, as if the world had already done its worst and nothing left could surprise him. The puppy did not bark, did not growl, did not retreat. He simply looked past Aaron, beyond the road, beyond the falling snow, into somewhere distant and unreachable. Aaron crouched slowly. "Hey there, buddy," he said, keeping his voice low, careful not to break whatever fragile stillness held the moment together. The puppy did not react. Up close, the signs of long suffering were impossible to miss. His hips jutted sharply. His spine rose in a narrow ridge. There were faint, dark streaks dried along his muzzle, the remains of tears frozen in place. He smelled faintly of wet fur, old dirt, and something deeper, neglect that had taken time to grow. Aaron extended a gloved hand. The puppy's ears twitched once, barely, but he did not pull away. He did not lean in either. He simply remained, suspended between existence and disappearance. Carefully, Aaron slipped his arm beneath the puppy's chest and lifted. The body was alarmingly light, like lifting an empty jacket. The puppy's head sagged against Aaron's coat. Breath so shallow Aaron had to press his ear close to feel it. For one long second, fear tightened in his chest. Then he felt it. A faint breath, fragile as snow settling on glass. He carried the puppy to the truck, wrapped him in his own jacket, and placed him gently on the passenger seat. The heater blew warm air across the cab, fogging the windshield. The puppy remained still, eyes half open, body trembling only from the cold. The veterinary clinic sat at the edge of town, a low brick building with warm yellow lights glowing through the falling snow. Inside, the smell of antiseptic mixed with the faint sweetness of disinfectant and wet fur. Dr. Evelyn Hartman, the on-call veterinarian, met him at the door. She was in her early 50s, silver hair pulled into a tight bun, thin glasses perched low on her nose. Years of emergency cases had given her a calm efficiency, but compassion lived just beneath the surface, always ready to break through. "Found him on the East Road," Aaron said. "He's alive, barely." They moved quickly. A technician named Lily, barely out of college, small and serious with a thick braid down her back, brought a blanket and a warming pad. Another tech, Marcus, older, with a soft voice and tired eyes, prepared IV fluids. The puppy was placed on the table under bright fluorescent light. The truth of his condition became even more stark. His gums were pale. His skin was cracked in places where fur should have been. His breathing was shallow and uneven. Dr. Hartman listened to his heart. Long seconds passed. "This isn't recent," she said quietly. "Starvation, infection, hypothermia. His organs are struggling." The words settled heavily in the room. Aaron watched the puppy's chest rise and fall. The small body looked so wrong on the large stainless steel table, like a mistake the world had made. Dr. Hartman met Aaron's eyes. "We can try, but I need to be honest with you. He may not make it through the night." The technician held out a clipboard. On top lay the euthanasia form. Aaron took the pen, then stopped. His hand would not move. He reached down instead and placed his fingers on the puppy's front paw. It was dry, cold, lighter than it should have been. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, so gently he almost missed it, the puppy's toes twitched. They shifted, sliding across Aaron's glove, and came to rest against his fingers. Not a reflex. A choice. Something inside Aaron tightened and broke open all at once. "Give him 72 hours, Aaron said. "If he quits fighting, I'll sign. But if he's still trying, we owe him that much." Dr. Hartman studied the puppy again. Then she nodded. "All right, we'll try." They placed IV lines into fragile veins. Warm towels were wrapped around the small body. A heating lamp hummed softly overhead. The puppy was moved into an ICU kennel lined with clean blankets. Lily filled out the intake form. "What's his name?" she asked. Aaron looked at the dog, at the dark eyes that had chosen him on the side of the road. "Rowan," he said. "Call him Rowan." The name was written carefully on the chart. Rowan, approx. 6 months, critical. Aaron stood there for a moment longer, listening to the thin, uneven breathing, watching the tiny rise and fall of Rowan's chest. Outside, the snow continued to fall over Ashford Ridge, silent and relentless. Winter had made its move. But somewhere inside that fragile body, something else had just begun. The ICU at Ashford Ridge Veterinary Clinic had a sound of its own. Not silence, but a careful kind of quiet stitched together by machines that hummed, clicked, and breathed for creatures too tired to do it well themselves. Fluorescent lights cast a pale, unflinching glow over stainless steel tables and rows of clear kennels, each one holding a story no one ever planned to tell. Rowan lay in the far corner, wrapped in layers of soft towels, the heating lamp suspended above him like a small artificial sun. His chest moved in short, shallow rises. Every breath looked like it had to climb a hill before it could leave his body. Deputy Aaron Wilder sat in a plastic chair beside the kennel, his coat still on, his hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee that had long gone cold. He had not realized how stiff his shoulders were until he finally sat down. The long drive, the cold, the weight of that small body in his arms, it had all settled into him now. Across the room, Dr. Evelyn Hartman moved with steady efficiency, her silver hair still tightly bound, her expression composed but alert. She spoke quietly with Lily, the young technician, who nodded and scribbled notes on Rowan's chart. Marcus adjusted the IV drip, his fingers practiced, his voice low as he counted the drops. Temperature is still low, Lily said. Heart rate's unstable. Dr. Hartman leaned into the kennel, placing her stethoscope against Rowan's chest. The seconds passed slowly. Finally, she straightened and met Aaron's eyes. "He's holding," she said. "But barely." Aaron nodded. He had no words that wouldn't sound small. The first night stretched on in a blur of beeping monitors and whispered updates. Rowan's body trembled despite the warmth. Twice his breathing grew so shallow that Lily reached for the oxygen mask without being told. Each time, Rowan fought his way back, like someone surfacing from deep water. At 3 in the morning, Dr. Hartman returned from checking another emergency case. She stood beside Aaron, her voice gentle but unflinching. "Aaron, I need to prepare you," she said. "He's suffering. His organs are under enormous strain. If we reach the point where his pain outweighs his chances—" Aaron raised his hand. "I know," he said, "but not yet." Dr. Hartman studied him for a moment, then nodded. She understood this kind of stubborn hope. It was the only kind that ever showed up here. The second night was worse. Rowan's fever spiked. His heart rate fluttered into dangerous rhythms. Marcus whispered numbers under his breath as he adjusted medications. Lily's hands shook as she placed a fresh IV line into a vein that felt like it might vanish beneath her fingers. Aaron stayed. He told Rowan stories he had never spoken out loud before, about the morning he and his wife had driven through this same valley in the spring, windows down, laughing at nothing, the air full of pine and sun. About the river that swelled every April with snowmelt, about the sound it made when it rushed through the rocks like it was late for something important, about how the mountains looked at dawn when the world still felt new. Rowan did not open his eyes, but his breathing slowed when Aaron spoke, as if the sound of a human voice anchored him to something solid. Just before dawn, Rowan's heart rate dropped. The monitor's rhythm grew thin and uneven. Dr. Hartman rushed in, followed by Marcus and Lily. For several terrifying minutes, the room filled with controlled chaos. Medications drawn, oxygen increased, hands moving quickly but carefully over Rowan's fragile body. Then, slowly, the numbers crept back. Dr. Hartman let out a long breath. "He's still with us." Aaron closed his eyes. He did not realize he had been holding his breath until that moment. By the third morning, exhaustion sat heavy in the room. Coffee cups lined the counter. No one spoke louder than necessary. Dr. Hartman studied Rowan's chart, her brow furrowed. "If he makes it through today," she said quietly, "it will be because he wants to." Aaron leaned closer to the kennel. "You hear that, buddy?" he murmured. "They say you're the one in charge now." Rowan lay still. Aaron reached into the kennel and placed his fingers lightly against Rowan's paw. "Rowan," he whispered, "I'm here." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the very tip of Rowan's tail moved, just once, faint as a falling snowflake. Lily gasped. Marcus froze. Dr. Hartman's breath caught. Aaron stared, his throat tightening. "That's it," he said softly. "That's my boy." It was not a miracle. It was not a transformation. It was one tired, stubborn muscle choosing the world again. The day crept forward. Rowan's temperature stabilized slightly. His breathing remained shallow but steady. His eyes fluttered open once, then closed again. Late that afternoon, Dr. Hartman pulled Aaron aside. "If his numbers keep trending like this, he might survive the night," she said. "But this is still very fragile. There will be setbacks. There's no straight road from here." Aaron nodded. He had never trusted straight roads. That evening, as the sky outside faded into blue and then black, snow began to fall again, thick and quiet, wrapping Ashford Ridge in a hushed white cocoon. The town's streetlights glowed through the storm like small islands of gold. Aaron sat beside Rowan's kennel long after visiting hours ended. He had nowhere else he needed to be. At midnight, Lily approached him with a soft blanket. "You should get some rest," she said. "We'll call if anything changes." Aaron hesitated, then finally stood. His legs protested, stiff and cold. He leaned over Rowan one last time. "Don't go anywhere," he said. "I'll be back before you know it." Rowan did not move. Aaron drove home through falling snow, the road empty, the world reduced to headlights and drifting white. He lay on his couch without taking off his boots and slept for 2 hours, dreaming of rivers and dogs and unfinished goodbyes. His phone rang before dawn. It was Lily. "You need to come," she said, her voice tight but bright with something new. He did something. Aaron was back at the clinic in minutes, heart pounding. Inside the ICU, the air felt different, lighter somehow. Rowan lay in the same place, wrapped in the same blankets, IV lines taped to his thin legs. But when Aaron said his name, Rowan's eyes opened. Slowly. Weakly. He lifted his head an inch off the pad, then let it fall again, exhausted but unmistakably alive. Dr. Hartman smiled for the first time in days. "He's choosing," she said, "against everything. He's choosing." Aaron crouched beside the kennel, his voice barely steady. "I knew you would." Outside, the snow continued to fall. Winter had done everything it could. Rowan was still here. Morning arrived slowly over Ashford Ridge, pale light filtering through the snow clouds like the world itself was unsure whether it was ready to begin again. The clinic parking lot was nearly empty when Aaron Wilder stepped out of his truck, frost clinging to the edges of the windshield. He moved stiffly, exhaustion settling deep into his bones, but his mind was sharp with a single thought. Rowan was still alive. Inside the ICU, the air felt warm and hushed. The machines whispered their careful song. Rowan lay where Aaron had left him, wrapped in the same blankets, the same IV lines feeding his fragile body. His eyes were open now, unfocused but aware, dark pools reflecting the ceiling lights. "Hey, soldier," Aaron murmured, kneeling beside the kennel. "I came back like I promised." Rowan's head twitched. Not much. Just enough. Dr. Evelyn Hartman joined them moments later, her coat already dusted with snow, her silver hair pulled back in its usual neat knot. She had slept only an hour, but her eyes were clear and steady. "His blood pressure stabilized overnight," she said. "Heart rhythm's still erratic, but it's holding. The infection hasn't spread further, which is more than I expected." Aaron let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "So, he's not losing ground?" "No," she said. "For now, he's standing still. And sometimes standing still is a victory." The day unfolded in fragile increments. Rowan sipped water from a syringe, just a few drops at a time. Lily coaxed a spoonful of nutrient paste between his lips. His stomach rejected the first attempt, then kept the second. Marcus recorded each number like it mattered more than the last. That afternoon, Aaron learned more about Rowan's past. The microchip had finally yielded information, purchased 6 months earlier, listed as property protection. No vaccination records, no veterinary visits. The trail ended with a disconnected phone number. "Someone kept him tied," Marcus said quietly, adjusting the oxygen line. "Long enough for this to happen." Aaron looked at Rowan, his heart tightening. "They didn't just leave him," he said. "They erased him." The second night came with new dangers. Rowan's fever surged again. His breathing turned shallow, uneven, each rise of his chest uncertain. Dr. Hartman stayed beside him for hours, whispering updates into the phone with a specialist from Missoula. "Aaron," she said near midnight, "we're approaching a line." He nodded. He already felt it. The room darkened except for the glow of monitors and the faint warmth of the heating lamp. Aaron leaned closer to Rowan. "You're doing good," he whispered. "You're doing better than anyone expects." Rowan's eyes flickered open. For a moment, something passed between them. Not understanding, not language, but recognition. Two living things aware of each other in the dark. Just before dawn, Rowan's heart rate dipped dangerously low. Lily's hands flew. Marcus called numbers. Dr. Hartman administered emergency medication. Aaron stood frozen, breath trapped in his chest, watching the green line flatten, then rise, then hesitate again. Finally, the rhythm steadied. Dr. Hartman pressed her fingers to Rowan's chest and closed her eyes. When she opened them, she gave Aaron a small nod. He's still here. The third night came quieter. Heavier, like the world itself was waiting. Rowan's body was tired now. Deeply, profoundly tired. But his breathing was stronger. His temperature hovered just below normal. The infection markers showed the first hint of retreat. Aaron pulled his chair closer and rested his head against the kennel. 3 nights, he murmured. You've made it through 3. Rowan's paw twitched. His tail flicked once. It wasn't enough to save him on its own, but it was enough to matter. In the early morning hours when the snow outside thickened again and the clinic felt suspended between yesterday and tomorrow, Rowan did something no one expected. He tried to stand. His front legs trembled violently, muscles shaking beneath thin skin. His paws slipped on the pad. He collapsed, breathing hard, then tried again. Aaron was on his feet instantly. Easy, buddy, easy. Rowan pushed once more, stubborn, furious with his own body, until his chest lifted off the bedding and he held himself there, just for a second, just long enough for everyone in the room to see. Then he fell back, exhausted but victorious. Silence swallowed the ICU. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Marcus swallowed hard. Dr. Hartman covered her mouth with her hand. Aaron knelt, his voice unsteady. That's it. That's the fight. By sunrise, Rowan's numbers had shifted, not dramatically but unmistakably. The infection markers lowered. His oxygen needs decreased. His heart rhythm smoothed. Dr. Hartman reviewed the chart, then met Aaron's gaze. He's not out of danger, she said, but the crisis is breaking. Outside, snow drifted softly through pale morning light. Winter had not won. The snow followed them all the way to Aaron's house. It fell in long, quiet sheets, drifting between the trees as the patrol truck wound its way along the narrow forest road outside Ashford Ridge. The mountains stood dark and watchful beyond the pines, their peaks swallowed by cloud. Dawn was still a promise somewhere behind the gray. Rowan lay in the crate on the passenger seat, wrapped in blankets, IV lines removed only an hour before, his body still trembling from the effort of staying alive. His eyes were open now. Not strong, not calm, but open. Aaron drove slowly. He did not want the road to frighten him. He did not want the world to rush at this fragile creature who had already fought it so hard. The cabin came into view at the edge of the forest, small and weathered, smoke rising from the chimney. It had belonged to Aaron's parents once, and later, briefly, to Aaron and his wife. After the accident, it became something else, a place where he went to listen to silence and remember how to breathe. He parked and stepped out into the cold, the wind slicing through his coat. The forest smelled of pine sap and snow. He opened the passenger door. Rowan did not move. Aaron knelt and spoke gently. It's just us now, buddy. We're home. He slid his arms beneath Rowan's chest and hindquarters. The dog's body was still too light, too delicate, his bones sharp beneath the thin warmth of living skin. Rowan's heart raced as they crossed the threshold from truck to porch. His breathing turned fast and shallow. The front door opened with a soft creak. Inside, the cabin was dim and warm. A wood stove glowed faintly in the corner. A single lamp lit the small living room, its yellow light brushing over old photographs, a worn couch, a pair of boots by the door. The moment Aaron set Rowan down inside the crate, Rowan froze. His muscles locked. His ears flattened. His eyes went wide, reflecting the room like a trapped animal in glass. The world had changed again. Aaron closed the door behind them quietly and sat on the floor a few feet from the crate. He did not reach for Rowan. He did not speak. He simply stayed where he was, breathing. Minutes passed. The wind moved through the trees outside. The stove cracked softly. Rowan's chest heaved. His eyes darted from wall to door to shadow. His body trembled, hard and uncontrollable. When Aaron finally spoke, it was barely louder than the fire. You're safe here. I'm not leaving. Rowan did not believe him. Not yet. The first night was long. Rowan refused food, refused water. His body curled as tightly as it could in the back of the crate. When Aaron shifted on the floor, Rowan flinched so hard his claws scraped the wood. At midnight, Rowan's temperature spiked again. His breathing turned ragged. The infection, still lurking in his system, had not finished its work. Aaron called Dr. Hartman, followed instructions, gave medication, cooled him with damp cloths, whispered to him through the fever until the trembling eased. Aaron did not sleep. When morning came, snow had piled halfway up the windows. The days that followed did not unfold like a miracle montage. They came with setbacks, fear, and patience that hurt. Rowan vomited after meals, then held the next one down, then refused again. Some nights, he whimpered in his sleep, his legs twitching as if running from something only he could see. Sometimes he cried out, a thin, broken sound that twisted in Aaron's chest. Aaron dragged an old mattress into the living room and laid it beside the crate. He slept there, his hand resting near the bars so Rowan could see him, smell him, hear him breathe. Little by little, Rowan began to test the world. First, he drank from the metal bowl when Aaron set it down and stepped away. Then, after 3 days, he accepted food from Aaron's open palm, his muzzle trembling as if expecting pain to follow. When nothing did, Rowan froze, then slowly chewed. On the 5th day, Rowan stepped out of the crate for the first time. One paw, then another. Then he stopped, panicked, and retreated. Aaron pretended not to notice. He spoke instead about the weather, the mountains, the river beyond the trees, about the way spring always returned even when winter felt endless. Fear loosened its grip one thread at a time. Outside, the storm finally broke. The sun appeared weak and pale, melting the edges of the snowdrifts. Aaron opened the back door and sat on the step with a mug of coffee. Rowan hovered in the doorway for nearly an hour, his nose working the air, his body leaning back as if the house might swallow him whole. Then he placed one paw on the porch. The ground was cold, solid, real. He stepped beside Aaron and blinked at the light. The world, for the first time, did not attack him. Weeks passed. Rowan's coat began to return. Soft black along his back, pale tan at his legs, the harsh raw patches fading to healing pink. His ribs remained visible, but there was strength now beneath the skin. His eyes tracked birds in the yard. His ears lifted when Aaron whistled. Some days were good. Some days the old fear came roaring back. A slammed door, a passing truck, a man's shadow crossing the road outside. Rowan would collapse into the corner, shaking, his heart racing. Aaron always stayed. The house learned his fear the way old homes learn storms. By the time the snow began to melt in earnest, Rowan slept outside the crate, his body pressed against Aaron's boots, breathing slow and deep. For the first time, the night passed without crying. Spring came to Ashford Ridge the way all honest seasons do. Slowly, uncertainly, with more promises than proof. Snow still lingered in the shadows of the forest, but the river beyond Aaron's cabin had begun to loosen its grip, water whispering under broken ice like something waking from a long sleep. The air smelled of pine and wet earth, and in the mornings a thin gold light crept across the hills. Rowan had been stronger, not healed, never that simple, but steady. He followed Aaron from room to room now, still cautious, still quiet, but present. He ate every meal. He drank deeply from the bowl without waiting for permission. At night he slept on the rug beside the bed, curled into a loose circle, breathing slow and full. For the first time since the road, Aaron allowed himself to believe they might outrun winter. Then one morning Rowan did not rise. Aaron noticed immediately. He always did. Rowan lay on his side, eyes open but distant, breath shallow. His ears did not lift when Aaron spoke his name. His body felt too warm beneath the hand that had learned every ridge and scar of him. "Rowan?" Aaron whispered. The dog tried to move. Failed. His chest fluttered. By the time Aaron carried him to the truck, Rowan's breathing had grown fast and labored, each breath a battle he was losing. Snowmelt streaked the road as they raced toward town, the world blurring past the windshield. At the clinic, the familiar smell of antiseptic hit Aaron like a memory he did not want back. Dr. Hartman took one look at Rowan and swore under her breath. "This is the infection," she said. "It never left." "It's flaring now that his body finally has some strength to fight, and it's hitting hard." They moved fast. IV lines, oxygen, stronger antibiotics, monitors screaming their careful warnings into the room. Rowan lay silent, eyes dull, ribs working like they had on the asphalt. Aaron sank into the chair beside him, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles turned white. This time, he knew exactly what he stood to lose. The night stretched thin. Rowan's fever climbed. His heart rate wavered. The infection spread into his lungs. By midnight, Dr. Hartman pulled Aaron aside. "He's critical," she said. "If he doesn't respond to these meds in the next 12 hours?" She didn't finish the sentence. Aaron returned to the kennel and pressed his forehead to the glass. "You already beat this once," he murmured. "You hear me? You don't get to stop now." Rowan's eyes flickered, just barely. By dawn, the crisis had not broken. Rowan's breathing turned shallow and erratic. His body shook with chills even under the warming lamp. The machines did most of the work of keeping him alive now. Aaron sat through the morning in silence, watching numbers rise and fall like a tide that did not care who drowned. Sometime near noon, the room shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a subtle change in the air. Rowan stirred. His front legs twitched. His head lifted a fraction of an inch, then dropped. He lay still for a long moment. Then, with a sound like a low, stubborn grunt, Rowan pushed again. Aaron was on his feet. Rowan's paws slipped on the pad. His legs trembled violently. Every muscle argued against the command his mind kept sending. Still, he pushed. Slowly, impossibly, Rowan dragged himself upright. Not standing? Not yet. But no longer lying down. Aaron knelt as Rowan leaned forward, his forehead pressing into Aaron's chest, his breath hot and uneven against the fabric of the jacket that had once carried him from the road. Rowan stayed there, trembling, alive. The room went very quiet. Lily covered her mouth with both hands. Marcus exhaled sharply. Dr. Hartman closed her eyes for a long second, then opened them with something new in her expression. "That," she said softly, "was not reflex." The numbers on the monitor began to shift. Not fast, not safe, but in the right direction. By evening, Rowan's fever lowered. His breathing steadied. His heart rhythm smoothed. The storm inside him had not ended, but it had broken. Late that night, Dr. Hartman finally smiled. "He's responding," she said. "It's working." Aaron sat back, every muscle in his body aching with the weight of hope. Outside, the snow that had returned that morning melted into the soil. Water ran down the clinic windows like tears finally allowed to fall. Rowan slept. Not the restless, haunted sleep of before, but real sleep. The kind that belongs to the living. By the time spring finally claimed Ashford Ridge, winter no longer felt like a threat. The snow had retreated into the high shadows of the mountains, leaving behind a world rinsed clean and breathing again. The river ran fast and bright, breaking itself against the stones like it had something important to say. The pines wore new green at their tips. Even the wind, once sharp as broken glass, had softened into something almost kind. Rowan stood in the yard beside Aaron's cabin, his coat catching the light. It had grown back in full now, deep black across his back, rich tan at his legs and chest. The old raw scars on his face softened into pale lines that no longer frightened anyone who looked at him. He still carried himself carefully, like a soul that had learned the world could change without warning. But his eyes had found their brightness again. Aaron watched him from the porch, coffee cooling in his hands. "You did it," he murmured. "You made it all the way here." Rowan lifted his head at the sound of his voice and walked over, pressing his shoulder gently into Aaron's knee. The quiet gesture that had become his language for "I'm here." That morning, Dr. Hartman had called with news. The rescue group was hosting a small adoption gathering at the clinic courtyard. They had a potential match they wanted Aaron and Rowan to meet. Aaron hadn't answered right away. Somewhere between the ICU nights and the long weeks of fear and healing, Rowan had stopped feeling like a case and started feeling like something much closer to a promise. Letting go, even when it was the right thing, carried its own kind of ache. But Rowan's story had never been about staying small. They drove into town under a sky the color of new beginnings. The clinic courtyard was filled with soft voices, leashes, and cautious hope. A few families waited on the benches, each one holding the kind of nervousness that belonged to people about to change their lives. That was when Aaron noticed Helen Brooks and her nephew. Helen was in her early 40s, tall and slender, with gentle eyes and a quiet strength that came from years of working ICU night shifts at the regional hospital. Her brown hair was pulled into a loose knot, a few strands already slipping free in the breeze. She moved with the calm efficiency of someone used to being responsible for other people's hearts. Beside her sat Evan, 14, thin and long-limbed. His shoulders folded inward as if he were trying to make himself smaller than the world. His hoodie sleeves covered half his hands. His eyes stayed on the gravel. Helen had spoken to the rescue coordinator earlier that week. Evan had not been the same since his mother died the year before. Anxiety had built walls around him. Words came rarely now. Sleep came worse. They were not looking for a pet. They were looking for something to hold the broken pieces in place. Aaron led Rowan toward them, keeping the leash loose, his own heart strangely quiet. They stopped a few steps away. "This is Rowan," Aaron said gently. Helen looked up and smiled, soft and hopeful. "Hi, Rowan." Evan did not move. No one rushed the moment. The wind moved the trees. A bird lifted from the fence and disappeared into the sky. Rowan stood still, watching them with the careful focus he had learned in hard places. His tail hung low but not tucked. His ears were relaxed, alert, listening. After a long minute, something shifted inside him. Without any signal from Aaron, Rowan stepped forward. Not fast, not dramatic. He walked straight toward Evan, stopping just in front of the boy's knees. Rowan studied his face for a second, the quiet fear, the guarded hope, and then lifted one still scarred paw and placed it gently on Evan's knee. The same gesture, the one that had chosen life. Evan froze. Then he let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding, his shoulders lowered. Slowly, he reached out and rested his hand against Rowan's fur. "Hi," he whispered. Rowan leaned in closer, pressing his chest against Evan's leg like he had found something important. Helen covered her mouth, tears gathering without permission. Aaron felt his chest tighten. They talked for a while, about Rowan's past, about Evan's fears, about what healing really looked like when no one expected it to be fast or pretty. The rescue coordinator suggested a few supervised visits before any decisions were made. But Aaron already knew. Rowan had chosen. Over the next 2 weeks, Helen and Evan visited often. Sometimes Evan spoke. Sometimes he didn't. Rowan stayed close either way. They walked the clinic paths. They sat on the grass. Once, Evan laughed when Rowan tripped over his own paws chasing a leaf. The day the adoption papers were signed, the sky was perfectly clear. Aaron knelt in front of Rowan, resting his forehead against the dog's. "You're going to be okay," he whispered. "You've got mountains to climb." Rowan licked his hand once, slow and certain, then turned and walked toward Helen and Evan waiting by the car. He did not look back. Months later, Aaron visited their house at the edge of town. The walls were lined with photographs now, hiking trails in the foothills, riverbanks, quiet sunsets. In every picture, Rowan stood at Evan's side. When Aaron left, Rowan walked him to the driveway, tail loose, eyes soft. He gave Aaron's hand one final lick, then turned and trotted back to his family waiting on the porch. Aaron stood there a long time after the door closed. Some stories are not meant to be kept. They are meant to be carried forward. Sometimes God does not send miracles with thunder and light. Sometimes he sends them with fur and a heartbeat that refuses to stop. Rowan was never meant to survive that winter, and yet he did. Because one man chose not to look away. and one broken soul chose to believe that love could still be real. That is how God works in our ordinary days. Not through perfect people, but through small choices. A pause, a hand extended, a heart that stays when it would be easier to leave. Maybe you are walking through your own winter right now. Maybe something in your life feels too cold or too heavy to fix. But this story reminds us that no life is beyond hope. No wound is beyond healing. And no moment is too small for God to use. If this story touched your heart even a little, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment and tell us where you are watching from. Subscribe to the channel so we can keep walking these journeys together. And if you believe in miracles that come quietly, type Amen in the comments. And may God bless every one of you who stopped to listen and care.